Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, AEC Outlook, Profits Through Productivity, Just a few housekeeping items before I pass it over to our presenters this afternoon. You can customize what you're seeing on the screen by going to the GoToWebinar screen viewer. And we do have two different audio options this afternoon, computer and the dial-in option. We do find that the dial-in option is a little bit more reliable as it is not streamed over internet. You can download the handout that we will be walking through this afternoon in the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel, and it will also be distributed to you after the webinar via email. Any questions you may have, please insert them into the questions panel of the GoToWebinar portion, as we will not be monitoring the chat during the presentation. We will have 3 polls. Yes, I said it 3 because we are offering CPE this afternoon, and we need you to answer all 3 of those polls in order to receive that CPE. We will keep those polls open until about 85% of our crowd has participated, or if a minute elapses, whichever one comes first. Speaking of CPE, we do distribute this through a third party called SimpleCert. So if you're not seeing that drop into your inbox within a couple business days, check your junk and your spam folder. And if you do not receive it, then please reach out to us at snmarketing@stanboness.com and we will resolve that as quickly as possible. And last but not least, our survey. Let us know how we did. Insert any questions that were not able to be answered during the live presentation today. And that is also where you will indicate if you need that CPE credit. So without further ado, Scott, Kate, Brad, take it away.
All right, Kaylee, thank you so much. And hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the latest in our Town Hall series, trying to provide information of use and value as you navigate the year of 2023 and beyond. And, you know, I know many of you were with us in our original, our prior Town Hall, which we did in December. And we shared some results of some research we did and talked about some of the challenges facing the industry. And really, we're going to continue the conversation today. So I am Scott Butcher. Great to be with you again. My background, I am the Director of Strategic Growth Advisory here at Stan Bonness. In our practice area, we primarily focus on strategic planning, business development and marketing strategy, do a lot of training, and then outsource marketing and marketing support type services. And I'm joined by my 2 very esteemed colleagues. And Kate, Allen, I'll tag you in.
Thanks, Scott. Oh, glad to be with everyone today. So Kate Allen, as you noticed, there's a PE after my name. So I was a practicing mechanical engineer. Similar to Scott, I do a lot of strategic planning, a lot of training, a lot of financial benchmarking and compensation benchmarking and those kinds of things with Stan Bonness. And as a practicing engineer, I've been in firms from 5 to 600 international full service, and I even was a co-founder of an MEP firm. So a lot of experience to bring today. So looking forward to being here. Thanks. Brad?
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Scott. Welcome, everyone. I'm Brad Wilson. I'm the finance guy of the group. We've got a marketing person. We got an engineer. I'm the guy with the CMA, management accountant. Spent my entire career either inside an AE firm or consulting for AE firms, which is getting close to 30 years now. I won't claim that date, but yeah, it's true. A lot of the most recent experience is ownership transition, mergers and acquisitions, general financial consulting. And today, of course, we're going to talk about productivity, which is some of all of that. So hopefully, like Scott said, you'll take away some good information that you can use in your firm after the seminar, after the webinar today.
Excellent. Thank you, Brad. And, you know, as Kaylee said in her introductory comments, you know, 3 poll questions, things come in 3 polls, 3 presenters, and a nice, simple, streamlined agenda of 3 topics for you today. So we're gonna talk about current economic trends. You know, if you've been on a webinar in the past that I've been on, guess what? That's what you get. But we always like to update them just so we're looking at the current situation. Productivity and profitability is really our focus for today. That's why you joined us. And then we're going to give you some ideas and examples when it comes to productivity as we move forward here. So with that, let's jump into a little bit of data. If you were on our December town hall, you recall that we just had a couple of questions that we surveyed AEC firms about. And one of them we said, you know, what steps are you taking to position for a downturn? And really what's most important out of all of these here is that top yellow bar, improving project financial performance. That is where firms are focusing. And we actually see this again and again with our clients, that it's risen to I won't say condition critical, but maybe by the time Brad shares some data with you, you'll think it's condition critical, that our firms really have a lot of improvement that we can do in this area. So keep that in mind as we go through this. We want to talk about the 3 Ps of project performance. We put this together just to test my lips and alliteration of all the Ps. 3 Ps project performance include people, productivity, and profit. So I passed the test. She sells seashells by the seashore. So these are so intertwined. I mean, that's why you see this Venn diagram there. Productivity is the focus of our time together today, but people are a major input into productivity, and it greatly impacts profitability on the back end. So we want to get you engaged from the get-go today. So we're actually going to launch with a poll question. And with that, we're going to ask you, at which phase of the project do you tend to lose the most money or overrun your budget? So Kaylee, you want to walk them through the options here?
Sure thing. So your options are pre-design, schematic design, design development, construction documents, and construction administration. So like I mentioned during housekeeping, if you're looking for that CPE after this presentation, make sure that you're answering all 3 of these polling questions. It's just how we tab if you're paying attention today. And we will wait till about 85% participation, or if a minute elapses, and it looks like we have about almost 70% of the crowd that has already voted. So everybody is wide awake this afternoon. We'll give you a few more moments here to finish answering, and then I will pass it back over to the presenters.
Excellent. So in the background, we've got our own little poll going of which is going to be the top choice. Put it that way.
Alrighty, so a minute has elapsed, so I'm going to go ahead and close and share the results with everybody to see. So 39% say construction administration. The runner-up is design development at 30%, and then at 17% we have construction documents, followed by pre-design and then schematic design.
Excellent. Thank you, Kaylee. And I don't know, Kate and Brad, we all were betting it was going to be construction administration, but I thought the number would be higher than 39%. Kate, Brad, thoughts on that?
Yeah, 30% in design development is a little bit of a surprise. That'll be interesting to talk through.
Yeah, I'm interested to learn more about that as well, but I think we have some ideas for that. But yeah, construction administration, it's funny, I sit on ACEC Colorado, and we have a group that meets that actually talks about this and some of the challenges that we're seeing in construction administration. So this is not shocking, but it is surprising to see DDs up there.
Okay, excellent. So why don't we jump into some of the industry metrics that we like to track? And so with that, we're going to start with new residential construction. This is a metric about housing permits that comes to us from the U.S. Census Bureau. And it doesn't matter whether you're in residential, single family, residential, multifamily, or non-residential, which is what a lot of us are in, whether it's, you know, highways or manufacturing or schools or bridges or utilities. We all feed off of this, because when you have new residential construction going in, whether in a brownfield, but you know, most often a greenfield, you need new roads, you need utilities. It drives schools expansions and commercial development and healthcare, and you know, of course, all this building feeds manufacturing, logistics, you know, the industrial network. And so we want to pay attention to what's happening. And when we look out here from September 21 to January 23, the latest statistic that was just recently released, we can see that top line at the top in blue. That is the total United States. And just trended backwards. Where were we in January 22? Well, we were a lot higher with housing permits than we are now. We've sensed this in our geographic markets. We've heard about it on the news. This has actually been talked about a lot. But what I like about this chart, that it breaks it out by regions, is that it really shows us where the dollars are being spent. So if you're in the South, guess what? You're relatively flatlined, but not a huge decline. But this is where the money is still being spent in residential development. Ergo, if new houses are being built in the South, that's going to drive all these other industries and market sectors. Then we jump down. I sit with you today in the northeastern United States in Pennsylvania. We are the yellow, you know, terminally ill flat line at the bottom. You know, not a lot of people are moving into Pennsylvania, but they are moving to the South, and a few of them to the west. And so the west there and the TO is the second largest geographic market in terms of new housing construction. So this is a metric we want to pay attention to. Another one we track is the American Institute of Architects Architectural Buildings Index. This relates to vertical construction, not horizontal construction. And they actually track 3 different components: billings, design contracts, and new project inquiries. Billings, it's work on the boards, you're billing for it. Design contracts, it's a new contract that came in the door. And new project inquiries, a potential client or an existing client reaches out and says, hey, we might want to build this new school or this new office building or this new student housing or whatever the case may be. And just looking at the past 2 years, or 2 years, excuse me, 2 months, you can see that billings has been negative. This is a diffusion index. So any score below 50 is a decline from the prior month. Any score above 50 is an increase from the prior month. But we can also see that inquiries went up over December and design contracts went up. So we would anticipate that that is going to then impact billings in the months to come as new contracts are coming in the door. So let's trend this out over the past, let's see, I think we have it since April, Kate. Yeah, from April 2022 to January 23, you can see it's declined. Now, again, keep in mind when you're looking at, say, August 22, the blue line there in inquiries, it drops to September 22. That is still an increase over the prior month, but the rate of increase has declined. So really, when we got into October, November, December, some of the indices are being tracked were in retraction or decreasing category. But we're also seeing a general upward trend. So hopefully that will carry through in the coming months. Another thing we track is, now this is a rear view indicator. This is backward looking, but it's still important because it gives us an indication of what markets are hot. So this is non-residential construction put in place. Put in place means it's been designed, it's been constructed, but this is where we know where the money's being spent. So we're really looking at December 21 to December 22, what is the percent change? Manufacturing, the hottest market. Lodging, a lot of lodging, you remember, went on hold in 2020 and was even slow to come back in 2021. Well, over the past year, it's really sprung back. And then you can see on down some of the non-vertical construction with water supply, sewage, and then all the way down, you can see at the bottom, only religious and power construction declined over that 1 year period. Overall, though, residential construction was only up 1.6%, so that is pretty anemic. That is not an indicator we like to see for our industry, but non-residential construction was up almost 14%. Next, we're going to share some data from PSMJ Resources. They publish a quarterly market forecast that looks out at, it's basically tracking proposal opportunities. And again, they're using a diffusion index. Their line is 0, so anything below a 0 is a decline from the prior quarter. Anything above 0 is an increase from the prior quarter. So you can see here, really going back to Q1 2022, which was a peak in proposal activity, it's declined every subsequent quarter. Now, decline is a decline in the rate of increase, not a decline overall. But we get out to Q4 2022, it's pretty much an anemic increase. Yes, there were more proposal opportunities than the prior month, but just barely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we move into Q1 in 2023, which will come out sometime in the middle of April. And then let's look at another data set from PSMJ. They define the hot markets. And so that's what we're looking at here. Again, this is based on the plus minus index that they publish, comparing proposal activity to the prior quarter. If you look at the bottom there, you see the top 5 quote unquote hot markets: transportation, heavy industry, water, wastewater, energy, utilities, and environmental. And then when you look at the actual chart that they publish, if you see a red dot, that is indicating activity in Q4 2022. The blue dot is Q4 of 2021. So we're comparing a year apart, and you can see in all but one category, 2022 proposal activity was lower than 2021, or the rate of increase had changed. So that's not good for backlog in the coming months. Yes, it's good that we're still seeing increases in most of these areas, but it's a declining increase, which then equates to declining backlogs as we move forward. Now, I mentioned previously the Stanball Nest primary research that we released. We wanted to refresh your memory with it if you saw it originally, or if you haven't, just share it with you. We asked 2 questions, and we said over the next 6 months, number 1, do you expect an economic recession Well, 57% of respondents in late November who were feeding into the survey said, yes, we do. The news every day changes depending upon your economist. Oh, it's a soft landing. Oh, we're going to have zero growth. Or, the one I heard yesterday, yeah, we'll be in recession by April or May of this year. So we still don't know. This is what AEC firms are thinking. And then the second question that we asked them was, do you anticipate a downturn in firm revenues over the next 6 months? And this was really interesting because 2/3 of firms said, nope, don't expect that at all. That's a sign of healthy backlogs. Of course, a lot of companies are looking at investments from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That's going to continue to drive backlog really in the coming 5 or 6 months and will in turn drive revenues. So with that, we have another question for you. Make sure everybody's awake right now, and we just want to know about where you think your revenue is going to fall in 2023. So Kaylee?
All right, so the poll is open. You have a few different options here. You don't see any growth, less than 10%, 11 to 20%, greater than 20%, and negative revenue growth. So again, I'll leave this open till about 85% of our crowd has participated, or if a minute elapses, whichever comes first. And it looks like there's 2 that are pretty tied right now, and I can't wait to share the results with you. All right, 82, 83, a couple more clicks and then I can close and share with everybody. All right, 85% have voted. I'm closing and sharing the polling question now.
Survey says.
Survey says less than 10% has 43%. 42% of the crowd is in that 11 to 20% range. 9% say no growth. 3% say negative revenue growth, and 2% say less or greater than 20. Excuse me.
Okay, excellent. Kate, Brad, any surprises there? Observations?
Still pretty optimistic attitude. I'm impressed. I mean, like you said, the economic news is kind of all over the map. But I think we've got some pretty strong backlogs coming into 23. So a lot of that revenue growth is probably still coming in from sales that were accomplished in 22.
Nothing to add.
Okay. So, it's interesting, some of the data out there on, the job needs created by the IIJA, with the lack of talent in the workforce right now, there's a lot of projects, potentially billions of dollars worth of projects that will never get built as a result of the funding, simply because there's not enough people to do it. So I think that'll continue to drive revenues in the design community for the next 5 years. All right, couple other data sources we want to share with you before we move on. First, this was another question that we had asked. What are the biggest challenges facing your firm today? Far and away, recruitment of new staff. We hear that literally all the time. We weren't going to ask you another polling question related to that, but we did a couple months ago, and it was still 79% of firms saying recruitment of new staff. The only thing we want to point out here is 4 of the top 5 that you're looking at: recruitment of new staff, wage growth, retention of existing staff, and cost of benefits are related to people. And what's not related to people is profitability, which ties into productivity, our 3 Ps, right? And then finally, we just need to be aware of the declining employee tenure that's happening. We can go into the Bureau of Labor Statistics and we can look at tenure or loyalty by age range, and we do that all the time. But we can also go in and we can look at the industries, and there is benchmark data for architecture and engineering occupations. It does not break out any further by age range, but nonetheless, you look at this. A decade ago, the average employee spent 7 years with a firm. Today, it's a wisp over 5 years. Your employees don't have the loyalty that they had a decade ago, and we need to recognize that when we are strategizing for our future. So with that, Brad, why don't you talk a little bit about productivity and profitability?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. So just a little high-level discussion first. Productivity is a poorly defined term in the AE industry. It is connected to profitability, but you can't make a direct line between the two. And there's many reasons for that. The way that we measure it is challenging. The ability to capture the data is challenging. And the whole reason we got into this analysis was from our previous town hall where we talked about the shortage of people. And everybody wants to complain, I guess, where'd all the architects and engineers go? So get in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, go back 10 years. There were 46.8, so 47 million people in the workforce actively employed or looking for work. 1.1 million of those were in the NAICS codes for the AE industry. Forward to 2021, there's 60 million now, maybe 61 in the labor force, and we have 1.5 million people employed in those same codes. The labor pool grew by 30%. AE employment grew by 37%. Now, is headcount a good indicator to use, a good data point to use in productivity? I mean, what if we're getting more hours out of 1.1 million people in 2011 than we're getting out of 1.5 million people in 2021? Are hours a good indicator of productivity? I know I have some totally useless hours. I'm not always productive myself. So I know that this indicator says, okay, we've gotten our fair share of people. Okay, our rate of employment has grown faster than the overall economy, but that doesn't give us a good indicator for productivity. It's what we're getting from them. So, okay, we'll jump to the next one. Revenue is the other main candidate for productivity. We measure as an industry, one of the kind of across the board metrics is net revenues or revenues per FTE. Full-time equivalent is FTE, or 40 hours per week, 2,080 per year. Comparing to the construction industry, and of course there's a caveat behind here, there should be an asterisk on here. Construction growth in total revenue has been 93% over our 10-year study period, 850 billion to 1.7 trillion. Now, I'll come back to that in just a second. AE growth has been 280 billion to 373, and this is worldwide based on the ACEC Research Institute. So construction has grown by almost 3 times greater than the revenues in the AE industry. So is that a good indicator of productivity? Well, what we know about construction is there has been tremendous inflation of construction materials costs, almost every sector, right? Whether you're building roads or buildings or water, wastewater treatment plants or whatever, it's not only the cost of the materials, but can you even get it, right? The stuff to do the construction. So of course, a lot of that growth in revenue is price driven, not productivity driven. And some of that relates to the AE industry as well. When we get to salaries here in a couple of slides, if you pay somebody $40 an hour and you mark them up 3 times, you get $120, right? If you pay that same person $50 an hour and mark them up 3 times, you get $150. So your revenues increased per hour, but did your productivity increase? Still can't tell. So let's dig a little deeper yet. If we take the total revenues in both of those markets and divide by the employment in each of those markets, we see now that we've got 1.1 million in construction per person going in place compared to a little over 750,000. But here's the big story, and what really is kind of driving this whole this whole town hall webinar and a lot of this analysis. In 2011, now this is gross, I realize these numbers are larger than you're probably used to seeing, but we were doing generally $250,000 per person in AE revenue, and that has gone down to 244. Now there's some decimal points and everything. We're not going to argue 2% decline versus flat, but it's nowhere close to the revenue productivity growth that the construction industry has seen. If we combine that with compensation, which is the next slide, there we go, annual wages have grown 46% over that 10-year period. Now, of course, if you take 46% divided by 10 years, that's 4.6 a year, not compounded, but we realize that a lot of that increase has happened just recently, right? Maybe 2018 to 21 in there was a big ramp up. And I think that it's probably even gone further up in 22. I know the PSMJ data is out for 22. I wanted to stay consistent with 10 to 10 year periods here. But the challenge is, of course, we're making less fee per person, wages have increased, there's a pinch here in profitability. So while I said earlier, there's not a direct connection between higher productivity and higher profitability, it certainly helps to be able to produce a significant amount of revenue per hour. Now, not many, well, I guess I would say there's a balance between the number of AE employees that are paid by hour or by salary. And of course, that's why we measure FTEs instead of by hour. But we'll go through some other productivity measurements here. The message I want to leave you with as we go away from these statistics is we've got similar inflation, quote unquote, in our costs that the construction industry has. And we have not addressed the cost escalation issues with our customers, with the AE customers, like the construction industry has. We have to be able to maintain any degree of profitability and productivity. We have to be able to pass these costs on, as the example of our construction friends have. Construction friends, I'll use that lightly. No, some of you probably chuckled when I said construction friends. So let's talk about or think about critically this professional services business model that we have used for generations in the AE industry. We've always been team-based, but the team has been more leadership driven and less collaborative, right? And so working from home, new project delivery methodologies are driving more teamwork, more collaboration, more soft skills, things that Kate will talk about. Historically, there's been a linear correlation between the number of headcount or the number of hours that you can bill in a week, a month, a year, and the amount of revenue. Okay, we've billed on an hourly basis for a really long time. A lot of projects are still hourly. More firms are going lump sum, but is it resulting in higher productivity? That's a question to be answered. Technology can help us achieve the nonlinear growth if the team members know how to use it, and we refer to that as a consultative mindset. So all of these things have to be addressed in an overall strategy to increase your productivity. The definition of productivity, however, is an economic output expressed as a function of input. It's a textbook, okay? So what is the economic output of the AE industry? It's not our revenue, it's not our hours, it's the drawings, it's the design, it's our ideas, it's our creativity. Yet all of the standard metrics in the AE industry related to productivity are net revenue divided by something, right? The clients don't care how much revenue we generated as long as it's below their budget, right? They're looking for getting their job done efficiently, without mistakes, on time. So the net revenue per FTE has a loose connection to productivity at best. The net revenue earned per hour, the hours are not connected to cost if you're on a salary basis. And net revenue per dollar of labor cost instead of hours is basically the same as the revenue factor. Revenue factor being your multiplier times your utilization. We won't go into detail here. There's other webinars to talk about metrics, but all of those have got flaws. What we have to think about is the net revenue per economic, is that the output we're looking to measure? And what do AE firms produce that is valuable to their clients that's not related to hours? I mentioned a couple of them: creativity, problem solving, big ideas. In order to address those, there's three components that have to be, let's call it, combined into strategy. First and foremost is that first P in the three Ps of Scott's alliteration: people. Talent challenges must be met, as I mentioned, getting more team oriented means more soft skills, more training, more consultative skills in addition to the technical side, but it won't solve the productivity problem alone. We've got other pieces of the firms, of our operations, that need to be addressed. We as an industry have tried to come up with new contract forms and delivery methods, or the construction industry has done, design build, IPD. We've got some AE clients that are doing construction management for fee. All of that trying to manage costs and push more productivity through the process of getting a job done, that's not good enough all by itself if your people don't have a consultative mindset. Technology can help in addition to that, but tell a quick story. We just had a client talk to us about their productivity, and one of their young architects wanted to take the client through a virtual walkthrough of a prototype elementary school. Well, the principal said, well, why do we have to use the technology for that? All they have to do is walk through the last 3 that we built for them, and they'll get the walkthrough. So technology for the sake of technology has not solved the productivity problem. But as you'll hear from Kate after we have our next polling question, firms that are able to combine these 3, the talent, the technology, the delivery system, the mindset towards the way we approach our projects, those are the ones that are going to have a leg up for increasing productivity and kind of breaking out of that old model that's, let's call it, plagued the AE industry for many years. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about your biggest productivity challenge. So Kaylee, if you would launch question number 3, we'll find out how the attendees feel about their productivity.
Sure thing. So our last and final poll is, what is your single biggest productivity challenge? You have a few different options here: people factors, technology factors, contract delivery methods, project management factors, and economic factors. And same thing with the last 2. I'll leave this open till about 85% have participated, or if a minute elapses, whichever comes first. And hey, Brad, there was a question in here that more of a thought, and I would like your thought on it. This person said, technology has made AE much more productive, yet we haven't charged at all for that increase. Any thoughts to add for that while we're waiting for this polling question to close?
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation, because I made the same one. When I was a very young accountant, one of the things that was happening in the AE industry was we were computerizing, right? The whirring of the manual erasers was going away and everything was going to CAD. And the number of hours needed to do a drawing got reduced tremendously, but the whole industry was still billing on an hourly basis. And we took all of that productivity gain and we put a big fat red bow on it and handed it to the clients, right? Here in lower fees, in less revenue. We need to be very careful to learn from our past. If you don't learn from your history, you're destined to repeat it. Yet that's not my quote. I forget who actually said that, but we will do that with the new technology coming online with BIM and Revit and all of the new drones as far as the surveyors go and things like that. We've got to break that hourly mentality or we'll do the exact same thing again.
All right, wonderful. Well, we did reach that 85% participation, so I'm sharing the poll now. And more than half of our attendees said people factors. 37% is our number 2 at project management factors. And then 4% say economic factors, and then tied at 2% each is technology and contract delivery methods.
Kate, I have to say that that's perfect given the material that's coming up, right?
Very nice.
Project management, we kind of had that anticipated to some degree, certainly.
Well, you know, in the AE industry, we are in the business of doing projects, so that is what we do, and we have to have people to get it done. So one of the things that we talked about is that we would share some ideas and examples, and so we're going to go through real quickly just around the AEC kind of project cycle, but then also talk more through the business cycle. There's a book that I love called Atomic Habits, and on the top of it, it says tiny changes for remarkable results. So what I'm about to share with you really are just tiny places where you can make a change, but when you put all those together, it probably creates a material movement in productivity and profitability both, and in your people's experience as well. I'm definitely a people person. I'm an engineer with a psychology degree, so that's definitely always at the forefront of my mind. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. I know HOK used this a lot, but this is the McLeamy curve, and it's something that I like a lot because I think it helps explain things to clients. Every time I've seen anything written about this, it's written from the design and construction side and what happens. I would actually flip it around and say what happens to our employees' experience, what happens to our clients' experience. So on this vertical axis, we have the level of influence, so our ability to influence the design or the project overall. And that's followed by this blue curve. So you can see the further out that we get in time, the closer, the further away we get from pre-design to construction administration, the less influence we can have because decisions have been made, things are put in place. On the right-hand side is cumulative project cost. Starts very low in the beginning and then increases until we get to the full project cost at the end. The white dashed line kind of points out the traditional design effort. And you can see there's kind of a point here where we kind of go where our influence is, heading down below where we can actually have an impact. And anytime we want to make a change out here, is that the cost is going to be much more dramatic. So I know with IPD and BIM and a lot of things, but I actually think this is a philosophy, is really trying to front load our design efforts. And with that, we have to bring the client with us. We have to train them. We have to get them to make decisions early. It's funny, in my whole career, I primarily did healthcare hospital design. And one of the last projects I worked on as a practicing engineer was actually where I had a hospital on board for a large renovation, and we pushed this model. And actually, I brought this board into every single user group meeting to make it clear to them that all decisions would be made by design development so that we could spend our construction documents getting those ready to go through the permitting process and all the review processes that had to go, and that they could keep that design development as those decisions that they made, because so often the decisions that they make later, it's just because push came to shove. It isn't because they didn't have the same information up here at the front. So this took less time on the owner's part. It gave our staff, a focus point of time to make sure we move through design instead of letting it get strung out. To me, this is one of those places where we can improve productivity, but we can also include a better client experience. In a big healthcare project, for example, we're always meeting with the user groups. Well, I'd rather not string it out. I'd rather we know what needs to get decided on. Let's make the plans for that and let's get decisions made early. So this is one place to me on our projects where we could have a dramatic impact. But it takes some education. It's not something that most clients are familiar with. But I will tell you again, I brought this to every single meeting on a big board, sat in the room, and I had everybody in the design on the hospital side go through and agree verbally that they were going to stick to this plan. So it seemed to help their budget, and it helped our processing and planning. When we think through the business cycle, we're going to go from proposals to project budgeting, then on to project management, resource strategy, client management, and project delivery. And we'll just talk through each one of these. So on the proposal strategy, productivity is start at the very top, our ideal client profile. Does this opportunity or client type support our corporate strategy? If not, why are we pursuing that? We have a good no-go strategy, go-no-go strategy, so that we're not wasting time and wasting our efforts that could be spent on projects or on opportunities that we might be more of a better fit for our company or that may be more profitable. Let's make sure we have a very stringent go-no-go strategy and that we stick to it. Have we streamlined everything in the proposal process that we can? Are all of our process and project narratives? Anytime I've completed an RFP, I always have to write about our project approach. Well, how many times do I need to sit down and create that from scratch? And we know we're going to have to bring in an example project. So do we have our tools up to date? Are we always refining those processes so we have a very compelling story to share? Do we have a system for managing our assets? So we're not looking for things all the time. And I know, Scott, you have a story you want to share here.
Sure. There's a great quote that since I was in college, I've been familiar with. There was a 19th century retailer in Philadelphia by the name of John Wanamaker, and he famously said something like, I know half my advertising dollars are wasted, I just don't know which half. And certainly if you look around your office and you think about marketing and business development, there's a lot of wasted dollars, right? A lot of wasted productivity. And you really see that by pursuing the wrong clients. And so we have a client we're working with right now that's going through ideal client profiles for each of their market sectors in each of their geographies and identifying what is the type of client, not the project. It's not a go, no go for a project, but what is the type of client they want to work with? Because if you understand that, that actually makes the go, no go process even easier. And so we've literally just a couple hours ago, I was working with them on one of these ideal client profiles. And the idea is to build the knowledge base across all the decision makers in the firms to understand these are the type of clients where we make money, we have cultural alignment, we can get the job done, they respect what we do, and then everything else, ergo, is not. And so that focus, just in the past couple of months, they've started turning down opportunities that came in the door because they realized that does not match our ideal client. And so the go no go actually happened organically because of the lack of alignment with an ideal client.
Thanks, Scott. And we're going to move on to project budgeting. So again, fee structure. Have we reviewed our fees, and are we sure that we're matching our fee to our client or our project type? Have we set a competitive fee that actually can support our talent mix? One of the things we're seeing in industry, right, is that we have the younger generation saying, hey, I'm not working overtime. So are we getting lower level tasks that are having to be done by higher paid, more experienced people? So do we have that good mix? Are we competing on value and not on price? That's all about how it's not just the markets that you play in, but it's how you tell your story, right? How you tell your story, your client either puts you on the commodity side or on the value added side. So telling a unique story is very, very important. What kind of profit do we build into the project? And is our project management team aware of it? And they're good stewards of it, right? That they're trying to do their best. To share a quick story with you about fee structures, Brad and I are actually working with a client where all of their clients, they use the same fee structure for all of their clients. And so part of that's been that we've encouraged them to look at what the multipliers look like for the different market sectors that they practice in, whether it's K through 12 or healthcare or commercial. And then also look at what is the mix that you want. For example, on healthcare, a lot of times we can drive a higher fee level than we can, say, on a simple commercial project. So what is the blend that I want of the markets, of the different types of clients, et cetera, and make sure that we're managing that and we're not just taking all the work that comes towards us, and that we're budgeting properly to match that client. Talking about project management, communication is everything. We all know that communication is where most things break down, whether it's with our clients, with our project team. Emotional intelligence is becoming super important, and really that's about self-awareness and your ability to, be aware of others. And can we have those uncomfortable conversations, whether it's saying, I thought we made a decision and we were headed this direction, so our design reflects that, and all of a sudden I hear we're over here. How do we have those uncomfortable conversations? How do we lean into change orders and things like that? And our engineers and project managers, are they really acting with that consultative mindset? They're looking holistically. They're looking out the 30,000 foot range saying, let me help solve the bigger problem, not just the problem that was presented to me all the time. And then finally, do we have lean techniques? And so a story to share with you is I am a total fan of the last planner system. If you're not familiar, it's really pull plans. And what I love about it is, and I was in a multidiscipline firm, is that architects, interior designers, planners, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, etc. And so we would set up a blue beam, and we would put all of our key milestones, up on the blue beam page, and then we would create a colored card for each one of the disciplines and a swim lane, they call it, for each one of the disciplines. What I love about that is that it's truly talking early about what do I need from you in order to make sure I hit that milestone? What do you need from me in order to hit that milestone? And so what I love about it more than a Gantt chart, I see the Gantt charts, I get all of that. But what I love about the pull plan, and I love it in Bluebeam and kind of the visual of it, is that here are the dates. If I don't get whatever you promised, here's what happens to the schedule, right? And it's a really easy visual way to talk about, hey, I have got to get that done for you because I'm not going to be the cause of what pushes this project off budget or off schedule. So to me, that's a really, it was one of the, it's simple, but super powerful way to really have an impact on productivity on a project. When we look at our resource strategy, it's definitely all about people. Are we making sure that their skills are staying relevant? There are some firms that resisted moving from CAD to Revit that needed to move, for example. But did we finally get that Revit training? And in the beginning, that was such a painful investment because it was such a different way of thinking. Do we have those emerging leaders, and are we making sure that we're giving them training that's helping them think about the business, not just getting the next project out the door? Do we make sure we retain our employees, right? This is everything right now. As far as I'm concerned, the way I kind of describe it is that there is we have so many chairs on the deck, and I just want to get as many chairs that I need over to my side of the deck, but there aren't any more chairs being added to the deck with any kind of regularity. So what kind of story can I tell, right? In our resource strategy, are we always thinking about continuous improvement? Simple examples there. And we talked about what do we need to stop, start, or improve what we're doing. Is our technology on the leading edge, the bleeding edge? You know, are we making sure that we're using it where it helps us with efficiency and helps us communicate? But like Brad said, don't just use it for technology's sake. Scott, you have another sample or another story you want to share?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a Stanball Nest client we're working with right now that's going through a pretty massive training undertaking. And what's fascinating about it, number one, is they're utilizing state workforce grants to train their staff. So about half the states in the country have these types of grants that you might be able to tap into. But what they did is they looked at the technology aspect and they partnered with a company to really help them elevate their Revit game. And then they partnered with Stanball Nest to help them elevate their people game. And so through different practice areas, we are working with them to build their project managers, to give them the soft skills. Kate's talked some soft skills here. We're working with them to help the emerging leaders understand their financial acumen. We're working with their seller doers to be better at the business development aspect of their job. So it's pretty broad training that's being rolled out over this 2-year period. I think we're 4 months into it now. And what they did is they looked at their staff and they divided their staff into cohorts. And then each of the cohorts, they moved into smaller group trainings with the idea being high levels of interactivity among a small group of like people in the organization. So they could take a training topic and say, cohort A and B gets this one, cohort C and D gets that one, all of them get the other one here. And so they've really leveraged training to help build profitability and productivity in multiple areas of the firm.
Thanks, Scott. And finally, we'll talk, or not finally, we have 2 more. We're going to talk about client management. You know, are we really leaning in and deciding what kind of client experience we have? You know, if they don't want to pay for the gold plated, are we giving them an experience that's gold plated where maybe it shouldn't be? It should be silver or something else. Is our staff really acting as a trusted advisor consultant? This to me has been my sweet spot when I was practicing as an engineer, in that I generally became the trusted advisor, the consultant that would help take a pain point off each one of my, you know, key people in my client's organization in order to make sure that I stayed a value added to them. Do we have a detailed client feedback process? And then are we really leveraging those existing relationships? You know, do we understand what matters most to them? Not what we want to give them necessarily, but what matters most to them and brings the most value to them. Can we broaden our relationship? There's so much that so many times we go into firms and they're often not cross-selling, or if they're cross-selling, it's very cross-selling light, where you have an opportunity to put more tools in the toolbox, is the way I think about it, is that, hey, I have, you know, when I came to SN, I have this very broad toolbox. Well, now if you need something, I have a place for us to go look to see if we might be able to help solve whatever problem that you're dealing with. You know, and then do we understand the cost of losing a client? That's huge loss of productivity. You know, if we lose that key client, that's been a big part of our organization. Scott, you want to talk a little bit about client journeys?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I had the opportunity a couple years ago to lead some research for the Society for Marketing Professional Services, and we were trying to figure out how firms are evolving their marketing programs. And what really came to light is a focus on the client experience. Now, a lot of firms talked about doing it. In reality, we're seeing fewer actually move forward with formal client experience programs than what was projected. But the whole idea is there's a journey that a client takes with your company, from they don't know you exist, they become aware of you, that's awareness. Then they're considering you, and then they're negotiating with you, and then they're hiring you, and then you're delivering the project, and then the project ends, you have closeout, and you have post-project loyalty. And these are all steps along a process. And so there's several clients that we've been working with to help them understand the journey. And what we do is we layer in the client journey, which are the touch points, with an empathy map, which is understanding what's the client thinking, what's the client feeling, what are their pain points, how can we help them through the pain points. And you know, one particular client example here, we know that, you know, roughly in our industry, 80% of our work comes from 20% of our clients. And we know it costs anywhere from 3 to 5 to even 10 times as much to gain a new client as it does to keep an existing client. So why don't we focus more on our existing clients? Well, this particular example of a company that Stanboness has been working with, they realized they were losing clients because they weren't creating a robust experience from cradle to there never should be a grave in client experience. And so we went through and worked with them to map their journeys, that this impacts marketing and business development. This impacts fee setting and negotiation. This impacts project management. And we started to identify all those areas where there were touches and opportunities, or well, there were gaps that created opportunities to enhance the client experience. And so develop this. I mean, I love it. If you've seen these journey empathy maps, it can be a whole wall that's just filled with post-it notes, beautiful rainbow of art. But at the bottom of it, you have concrete strategy, which really helps and drive your productivity.
Great, thanks, Scott. And then finally, we're going to talk just quickly about project delivery. One of the things that I've always wondered about, like if you're working with a client and this is their one and only project, right? They're going to build in 10, 15, 20 years. And often they just don't have the level of sophistication and knowledge. So what are we doing about maybe helping them pick a better choice as far as how they want to approach the project, how maybe they might want to contract the team, how they might want to try to move their project through, how we might make decisions early. So I think even with some experienced owners, there's still an opportunity for some education. And another thing is so that we can head off any kind of productivity disruptions is, do we understand any of the major complexities and any of the issues that are going to arise, and do we head them off with early planning, right? Do we wait until they happen, or do we get ahead of them? Teamwork and collaboration is everything. It's, one of the most important things. There is not a project out there that does not start with a business need, in my opinion. I could be wrong. If there's a business need or a community need, there's some kind of need that generates a project. And so getting as close as we can to that with teamwork and collaboration, the way we're approaching projects today, that used to be really the architect got to own that knowledge, that piece of knowledge, and hopefully it got passed along. But now hopefully we're all getting in front of it and we're talking with those owners early so that we can be a better contributor. And so we actually contribute to what the solution is that they're trying to get the other end. One of the big issues that we have with project delivery, and again, I sit in a group that talks about this quite frequently, is how do we pass information along from the owner to the to the design team, to the construction team, to the operations team, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the big issues we always run into is there's liability concerns along that path. If I do a Revit model, can I hand it over to the constructor? Or does the constructor have to build their own Revit model? Because, it's a finger pointing. Where's going to be the blame? Where's going to be the financial impact? And so we're losing so much productivity as far as I'm concerned when we can't share models and we can't do things like that. And I know contractually there are some ways we're trying to overcome that, but it's still very siloed as far as what I know about it. Just one of the other issues that we have is, I saw you guys all complimented, that one of your biggest issues is project management. It's going to be, it's also, we use a lot of money in the construction phase. And this isn't to put constructors under the bus because it's affecting us as well. But what's happening to the lack of people resources and the variability in competence and expertise? Quality is going to become, if it's not already, a huge issue. So do we need to simplify our systems? Do we need to simplify our designs? Because if you think about it, even the person in vertical design who finally operates the building, those competencies are variable. That expertise is missing as well. So one of my strategies for impacting project delivery really would be to simplify, to be honest. It's make the control schemes a lot easier to understand, et cetera. Anything you want to add to this, Brad, before we wrap up?
Yeah, just a quick, doing research for this webinar, making some phone calls to various firms. I found my way to a client who had basically run the gauntlet of all the different delivery methods. Design, bid, build, IPD. They even tried to do construction management themselves. What they found was that the construction format, the contract, should not drive the project. It's got to be the other way around. And they really made an intentional effort to get in early with the clients to identify the challenges with the project, how difficult, complicated it might be, and what delivery method made the most sense project by project. Now, not all clients will let them do this, but if you're the trusted advisor, if you've got that consultative mindset and have built that in as part of your training and part of your delivery method, then this firm has found itself to be very successful, very productive by making sure that each attribute of the project is considered when they're deciding the construction delivery contract format. And it sets as the McCleary curve showed, that's a decision even before the contract is signed that you've got in that front hoop that smooths the path in front of the project for months to come.
Yeah, so just to wrap up real quickly, I think, all the things that we just shared with you are just those teeny tiny things, right? The tiny changes that I don't think there's anything in there that's just like, this isn't the secret sauce. It might be for your firm, but it's because of how you adopt it and how you deliver on it, right? It's making those changes everywhere along the business path that we can, or the project path that we can, and having a different impact, which hopefully creates a different employee experience, a different client experience, and a different project experience overall. So that we'll move on. Any questions?
Brad and Kate, the one did pop up. What is lean? Can you elaborate on that a little bit for our audience?
Gosh, I'm so sorry. It's kind of been adopted from Toyota, and Scott, you might want to have some things to show in here, but it takes the Toyota, and the goal of lean is to take all the waste out. It's to try to find those points of waste and remove those points of waste so that we're more productive, so that we're more effective, and that we use our resources better. So if you're not familiar with it, there's the Lean Construction Institute. I would absolutely say find out if you have a local chapter. I would be shocked if you don't. And make sure that you start to lean into some of it, because I think there's a lot of good, super good ideas within Lean for construction specifically. So it's not just Lean Toyota, it's actually Lean for the construction industry. And that affects all of the designers as well. And that's where, that technique for pole planning, and then being able to do it on Bluebeam, because, when people are remote, we aren't all in one space together. If you're all in one space together, a lot of times you'll see when you get the big room meeting, if you do IPD and you get the big room, there's all the yellow stickies all over the wall that then get converted into a software program. And I just think Bluebeam it's a good place to learn. It's a good place to put the practice to give it a chance and give it a try. Good
Yeah,
question.
a great example of this. Lean Construction Institute advocates for use of the A3 11 by 17 sheet of paper. And so you think of a proposal that you submit to a client, 50 pages, 80 pages, 120 pages. Nobody reads them. On average, they spend 2.5 to 3.5 minutes looking at a proposal. So imagine all the waste that goes into a proposal because the client doesn't have time to read it. You're spending 80 hours building it that you're just totally wasting time. Well, what if you boil it down to 2 11 by 17 sheets of paper? That's what an A3 is. And where that's been adopted, not just in these proposals, but also some of these companies or institutions that are using these, they want their weekly project updates on a 11 by 17 sheet of paper. Only the important stuff goes on it. All the other stuff is waste and it's eliminated.
Well, we're using it for strategic plans, one-page strategic plans as well. So any other questions, Scott, out there?
I think another one is popping up here. What is the best way to undertake a project delivery assessment of our technology to ensure we can move from bleeder to leader?
Oh.
Good term. I'm going to use that, bleeder to leader. I like that.
Oh, that's a great question.
I'll have to get back to you on that one. That's a big, complicated, we promised to respond, but there's a big, complicated answer to that, for sure.
I don't know if it's so complicated. I don't know if it's so complicated as it's so individualized, right? It's understanding how we want to deliver projects and how our delivery project can interact with our technology. Real simple example for me is I use 3D scanning. So when I'm looking at a big, ugly machine room that has all these air handlers and pumps and everything in it, we do a 3D scan of it. At that point, I no longer have to go out to the field, which is maybe in the next state, and I don't have to go onto the job site to meet with the facilities director or the facility staff. We can actually go into the 3D space and we can walk around and I can ask questions. We can tag a lot of things to it. So to me, it depends on how you use technology. To me, that was brilliant. That saved a tremendous amount of time on a project, and it was also a tool that, hey, if I was a facilities director, I'd use it for training. inside my own company? How do you do the PMs on, you know, these coils or this air handler or whatever you need to do? So I think that's how we go from leader to leader, is we decide how technology works best for how our client types, our project types, and our delivery process. I think we gotta go. I think time's up.
Clock, aren't we?
Kaylee, any final words for us?
No final words, just a reminder to fill out the survey at the closing of this webinar, and one last plug to say that's where you indicate if you need that CPE credit. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Scott, Kate, and Brad, well done, and we look forward to see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your attendance.